Good evening, everyone. I'll start this meeting at 7:02. Welcome to the Finance and General Purposes Committee. Starting on the agenda is public question time. We have one member of the public.
I didn't ask a question.
Doesn't wish to speak. Thank you. We go to apologies for absence. I have one at the moment from Councillor Woodgate, who is unwell.
So we've got Councillor Bigger, who has a family.
And Councillor Biggs. Thank you, Town Clerk. Item 3 on the agenda, to receive the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of March 22 and 9th of May 22. I'd like to propose those minutes. Can I have a seconder?
I'd like to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Boss. Before I go any further, I would just like to ask the committee, as the Vice Chairman is unwell, that Councillor Farron stands in. Is that agreed? Agreed. Now I'll go on. Do I have any questions about the minutes? I see none. So can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
That's after finally made it. Let you know, Chairman, that Councillor Woodgate has joined us on Zoom, and the Deputy Clerk is there also.
Please, thank you, sir.
As far as we go to the right of one is concerned. Thank you.
Good. Item 4 on the agenda is to receive any declarations of interest. The ones that I know about are Councillor Matthews for item 17 and Councillor Mrs. Farron and Osborne for item 19. Yes, Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, that's right, Chairman. I own the house in Dexter Drive, and I'm also a member of the East Grinstead Budget Trust. You have that in there.
Councillor Dooley.
I'm now a trustee on Checkenham also.
Okay, thank you. Any other declarations of interest? No. Item 5 on the agenda is Chairman's announcements. I have a couple. St Barnabas Church, we're still waiting to hear from the diocese that they approved the sale to us. We are in the process of applying for the loan, but have a call for public comments at the moment. So that seems to be going pretty well, just waiting to hear from the diocese on that one. Loudons Lane, the proposed project to stop the fly tip in Loudons Lane has had a boost as the council was successful with the application for the cost of the bollards from the Gatwick Community Fund. And Clarion are working towards the cost of the CCTV in consultation with the residents before the project can go further. Mid Sussex have agreed to one final fly tip clearance when the bollards go in, which is expected to be later this year. This will report to public services going forward. Do I have any comments on that? Councillor Stubbs.
Could I just ask, is the, with regard to St Barnabas, has the purchase price been agreed between the parties?
That's exactly what we're waiting for the diocese to
Yes.
confirm.
Yes.
So we put in an offer and we're waiting,
That's exactly, we put in an offer which has been favourably received,
right?
but they can't confirm anything until the diocese say yes.
Okay, fine.
But I've
Thank
been
you.
told it's all looking very positive.
Good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
section come through their refugee committee at the moment. So as soon as we know something, hopefully it's soon, then we can let members know.
Fine. Thank you.
Item 6 on the agenda is to receive the list of approved payments from March, April and May 22. These are the list of the payments for approval. And if there's any questions on that, I'll pass over to Mr. Chambers. Councillor Amos.
I noticed in the first month of expenditure, there was a £422.40 payment for the Christmas lights tender notice. Can I ask why that was so much? Because it seems quite a lot.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, we are required when we have a tender over a certain amount to place advert in local newspapers, and no local newspapers charge an awful lot for their public notices, and that's what it was. Two local newspapers, the Courier and also the Middy, and the combined charge was the 400 charge.
Do I have any other questions? In that case, that item is for noting. Is that noted?
No. Noted.
Thank you. Move on to agenda item 7, which is the Town Council Finances Position Statement. It's for the committee to note the council's cash and investment balances as at 31st of May 22, and the amounts are in the papers. If there are any questions on that, I will hand over to Mr. Chambers. Councillor Osborne.
I think Mr. Chambers is probably going to answer my question anyway, but I notice the interest rates are pretty poor compared with where they've moved recently. Presumably Mr. Chambers, etc., will be looking to improve those rates as they seem to be sort of on the rise at the moment.
Most of the investments that we have, actually, they do track the interest rates. When the interest rate goes up, our yield also goes up with as the interest rates goes up. So from that point of view, it's not necessary because it's happening automatically. But other investments that don't do that, that mature within 1 year, when the time comes that those investments do mature, yes, we will relook at what's available on the market for reinvesting the money.
Just if I follow that one up, I see that we get a pretty good rate from the local authorities property funded fund, which is 3.5%. So we've got 300,000 in there. Is that the maximum we can put in?
No, there is no maximum that you can put in there, but it is definitely the property fund is a long-term investment. So you wouldn't want to put anything in there if you had a mind that you might want to make a withdrawal from it, certainly within 12, 24 months.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions. So this item again is for noting. Is that noted?
Noted.
Thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 8, and this is performance indicators. Again, this is for noting. Does anyone have any comments on the performance indicators? I've seen none. So is that noted?
Noted.
Thank you. Move on. Agenda item 9. Recommendations from committees. We don't have any, so move on to item 10, which is delegated decisions. And that again is in the papers. And the clerk in discussion with myself and the vice chair agreed to award £500 from the community revenue grant budget to the Oasis CAP for start-up costs. This CAP runs every other week on a Wednesday morning and is open for all displaced people who are settled in East Grinstead. Ukrainians, Afghans and others attend, and the current numbers of attendees are around 50 each week. So I think that's been quite successful. At this time, there's a request for English language lessons, and the clerk is in discussion with the CAB, who are providing district council funded classes in Burgessville to replicate this in East Grinstead. Councillor Stubbs.
Just where it is.
It's Glenview.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
I should know.
yeah.
Right, thank you.
And I believe it's Sarah Howland that was,
No.
am I getting mixed up with?
It's Fiona Hayward.
Oh, beg your pardon,
Steve
Fiona Hayward.
Navely, Steve Navely.
Those are enabling, who were very much helping out in the emergency action group. So, you know, well done for them for carrying on.
Yeah.
This item is for noting, so do I have any questions? So is that noted? Yes, thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 11. And this is for the approval of annual review of effectiveness of internal control. This is a statutory statement for the end of year accounts along with the external audit inspection. We are delighted to advise yet again we are an unqualified audit, meaning that our finance and governance procedures are all correct, examined and in place. This one is item is to note, and I'll hand over to Mr. Chambers if there's any questions on that. I see no questions.
So well done to Mr. Chambers and the staff.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So I think that's for noting, isn't it, Town Clerk? Yeah, thank you for what you do. So item 12. Annual returns, which one are we on? 12. Annual return statement of annual accounts. So as you can see from the report, there. Members are asked to approve this. And I'll hand over to Mr. Chambers for any questions.
Just a few words to add on this. Just to say, yeah, the accounts and audit regulations require us to complete the annual governance and accountability return, which is attached as Appendix E and Appendix F. Appendix E is the annual governance statement, which council are required to give an answer to the 9 questions as shown in Appendix E. In the event of a no response to any of the questions, then an explanation as to why council think the answer is no has to be given. I have listed out below in the report, I won't read through it all, but I have listed out fairly detailed answers to each of the questions as to why council can be reassured that they can answer yes to the questions. Appendix F is to be the council's published statement for the 21-22 financial year. I have also included with Appendix F the council's I&E summary and the balance sheet for the year. Quick summary, very quick summary of the data for last year was that our trading surplus for the year, I had anticipated it was going to be in the region of 60 to 80,000 back in December, which I suppose wasn't a bad prediction because the surplus was actually £66,794. Which, as has previously been mentioned, actually resulted therefore in a deficit of £83,206 because of the £150,000 that we've invested in the long-term investment with the property fund. Just one final point to say on that deficit, therefore, of 83,206, it is being predominantly funded by a reduction in the general reserve of 73,000, with the remaining 10,000 being funded by movements in the earmarked reserves. But just wanted to sort of make council aware of the position from the last financial year.
Oh, thank you very much. Do I have any questions?
On number 8, it says the internal auditor was appointed by council in 2015. That seems an awful long time. So it's the same person. I'll be talking about having that role for 7 years.
It's the same audit company, but not the same auditor.
Right, it doesn't actually say that, does it? It says the internal auditor.
Our internal auditor is Mulberry and Co.
Yeah, so,
So it is,
yeah,
Just
yeah, sorry,
reading
yeah,
it, it
yeah,
seemed
yeah.
an awful long, it didn't seem
yeah.
right
that-
that
so,
someone
yeah,
would
I-
hold
I-
that position for 7 years
Yes.
without it.
It's a
being-
different individual. The auditor is, yes, Mulberry and Co is the auditor.
Okay, that's
But
fine.
they will send a different,
That's absolutely
Person.
fine. And
That's-
just the
yeah.
way I read
Yeah.
it,
Yeah, and they have to do that, don't they?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
that's fine, thank you.
Okay, I see no other questions, so I would like to propose that members are asked to approve the annual governance statement, Appendix E, along with the annual return, Appendix F, as separate minutes for the year ending 31st March 22. Do I have a seconder?
I'd like to second that, Chair.
Vice Chair, all those in favour? Disagree. Move on to agenda item 13, councillors' allowances claim 21-20.
Sorry, Chair, you've got two votes on that first one, please. You need to confirm yes to answer any questions 1 to 8, and then you need to accept the account. We have 2 different questions you need to answer that. So you should agree.
Right, beg your pardon. So
So
do you want to
it's
start
very
again?
important, Chair, because that is something that you're required to see. It's a very clearly 2-part minute here, so it's very good.
Okay, so we start again.
Thank you.
Okay, so, right, I'd like to propose to recommend to council to approve the annual governance and accountability return for 21-22 by A, confirming yes to questions 1 to 8 and not applicable to question 9 as set out in the annual governance statement, section 1, contained in the appendix E of the FGP committee papers, 23rd of the 6th, 22, and to agree that this now be signed by the chairman and the town clerk. May I have a seconder?
I'd like to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Is that agreed?
Yes,
Yes, right, thank you.
I think.
Now we go to B, accepting the accounting statements, section 2, as set out in appendix F of the FGP committee papers, 23rd of 6th, 22. I would like to propose that. Do I have a seconder?
I'd like to second that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. All those in favour?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
So those are the resolutions you will be voting on when we move to special council after this meeting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right, agenda item 13, councillors' allowance claim 21-22. Do I have any questions on that? Okay, this is for noting, is that noted?
Noted.
Thank you. Agenda item 14, which is annual staff and training report 21-22. I think that is also for noting, isn't it?
Yes.
Do I have any questions on that?
No questions, Chair.
No, thank you. Is that noted?
Noted.
Thank you. Right. On item 15, and this is in 2 parts. So the first part is the civic regalia. And this is to consider a range of options as a memento for town mayors for the year in office and to confirm whether gold effect name badges are to be introduced. Following the last meeting, committee are asked what they would like to have as mayor's memento going forward. And the second matter which we discuss after the regalia is to whether to reintroduce the gilt name badges which were discontinued in 2018 in favour of what we currently have, the lanyards. As you can see on your papers, you can see that the past mayor's jewel and the current costs are there. The town crest costs £48.75 each. if ordered in bulk at 20 at a time plus £15 for personal engraving. If the crest is to be retained, the officer would suggest some small updating of the colours, and the rest is in the reports there. So do I have any members wish to discuss that item? Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, we discussed this at the last meeting, and the existing shield, I mean, you know, from my last comments, I think we should appreciate the value of the mare, and by taking away this for the sake of 63 quid, I think belittles the mayor's position. It devalues it, and for goodness sake, he gives, or she gives, a whole year of their life. They will be very busy. They raise a lot of money for the town, and are great ambassadors for the town, not just in the town, but in various places outside. And so the least we can do, I think, is give them a shield or something to commemorate it. I see here that it says the crest colours themselves would pop much better without the background. Through you, Chairman, I'd like to ask the town clerk, does that mean the blue would be removed and just have a clear background, or can you explain what that means?
I think, personal opinion, that the blue part of the shield, which if you print it out in black and white, you won't see very well, but the shield itself, the coat of arms, sits on a light blue background, which is really quite a mottled blue. It's not part of our shield at all. I think it was there to try to make the colours stand out, but actually I think it does the absolute opposite. And I would suggest that if we decide we want to carry on with the shield, we should look at trying to get that redone so that it looks better and stands out more. Which is simply my suggestion, but obviously if council like the way it looks, we carry on with what it is. Just personally, I think it could look so much better.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
No, I agree. I think the light blue is wishy-washy, and it could be improved. On the ordering of 20, I mean that's 20 years we're ordering for. Is that minimum amount that we can order at that price?
We can order less, but if we order less, the price goes up. So yes.
Substantially, or?
I haven't got the figures with me, but I think from memory it goes up maybe £3, £4, £5 per shield. But it's not a huge amount, but depending on how many you order, if you're ordering 5, I think you could be looking at an additional £10 or so per shield.
Yeah. I mean, I've got no problem with 20, but you know, if people want to reduce the cost on that. So that's that. Then we go on to the, I'm more than happy for us to continue that. On the example of the crystal, and that has no name on it, if I understand what I've read there. It doesn't give much away. I mean, it looks a nice piece of crystal, whatever. But and what's the cost of that if it was laser spout out?
They work out at £31 and a penny if ordered by bulk of 20.
Yeah,
And
and
again, small
the
numbers.
laser is quite expensive. Isn't it?
No, that includes it.
All right, so
That includes the laser, the 3D lasering.
so the total cost of that would be
£31 and a penny.
£31, and that's inscribed as well.
It wouldn't be inscribed. That would be something we'd have to look and see how we did that. There's no inscription. We just have the laser. We couldn't find anything that had both an inscription and the lasering. So
Yeah.
that was the best option we could come up with.
So what would actually be on that?
It would be the crest. It would
Just
be
the crest.
Royal crest. Yeah, so it could say something about the town there, but it wouldn't necessarily, it wouldn't name the individual or the year.
Hmm. Yeah, okay. And the third example is a scroll
Mhm.
framed and glazed. And that works out at 20 quid, isn't it?
We're basically just be paying for the frame.
Okay. And that would have the name of the mayor and his term of when he was.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't mind either, to be quite honest. But I wouldn't particularly want the crystal one.
Thank you.
I leave it to other members to
Thank you.
discuss.
Before I come to Councillor Mrs. Belsey, personally from myself and the next meeting, I've no idea where the shield is, and quite rightly as mentioned, it probably needs updated if we were to keep that. However, did you come to the certificate? I remember, well, I know when I was in the fire service, I got presented with a 25-year service award. And that has currently been hanging in my downstairs toilet on the wall. Don't laugh, but it's there, and for you to see and remember. Whereas the shield, me personally, got tucked away in the drawer and never to be seen again. But I'm just putting that one out there. So, Councillor Mrs. Belsey.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Matthews. I actually do display my shield, and a lot of people do look at it and pick it up and see it. I'm proud of it. I'm proud to have been there. As Edward said, we worked really hard during that year, and I think it's a small token of appreciation, and it's something I'm very proud of. I'm happy for the background if that is felt to be altered, but I would like personally to retain the shield.
Councillor Mrs. Fowler.
Thank you, Chair. I totally agree, and I really sort of reiterating really what I said before. I think the mayors do work pretty hard, and it should absolutely 100% be recognised. I just wonder if it's now time to change. I love the town crest. I just wondered if it should be modernised slightly. Is my thought, but absolutely a memento to show what we've done. 100%. Maybe it's just time to modernise it. But I do think the town crest should be part of that modernisation.
Councillor Amos.
So I'm totally against all of these proposals, and I think you should be on your own grounds. Now, on your own grounds, you all think something should be done for the community if it creates more value than it costs. So if a play park costs £10,000, if it creates £12,000 of value, you think you should go ahead with it because it creates net £2,000 of value for the community. That is your sort of way of thinking. Now, these shields, the most expensive ones, will cost 8p for each taxpayer. 5p if you go for the less expensive one, and less if you go for the paper on the wall. I can say with absolute confidence, if you asked each and every resident, the average resident, do you want to pay 8p for the mayor to have a shield or something like that? They would go, no. They do not derive 8p's worth of value from this shield. You are going to make the community worse off, so the mayor can have a shield. And on your own grounds, so I'm not putting forward my political philosophy here, but on your own grounds, this should not go ahead, because it's simply absurd to suggest that you'd be able to get most of the town to pay 8p for this. And I think that's particularly true at a time when inflation is at 9.1%. I think it's true, into the future, and in the past it would have been true, but particularly now it's true. I would agree with Dick's point though, that if we are to go with anything, then that is a good idea because it will be seen by a greater number of people. And I think of the typical mayors, fewer will display it such as you, and more will display it like Dick. And I would also say, when it comes to appreciating the mayor, the mayor does get something out of the mayoralty. He gets power, he gets another vote. I, for one, would see that as enough. The fact that you can come onto committee meetings and you can influence the decisions. I would willingly sacrifice a shield for that kind of power. So I'm totally against these proposals for the 3 reasons that I've outlined. Thank you.
Well, I wish I'd known that when I was mayor. Right. Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, I think Councillor Amos underestimates the public. I think they're not that mean-spirited. And from my experience, and I did it twice, which you all know about, I'm not going to I met lots of people and they were very appreciative. And it's and I don't think, I can't honestly see people, generally speaking, begrudging 8p to sort of show appreciation to someone who's actually, in my case, it cost me a lot of money because I was right in the middle of my working life, and I didn't go broke over it, but I can remember from there, who sat around this table, he actually went bankrupt because he spent so much damn time on it that his business folded. So it's a serious business, and I do think the public wouldn't be grudging. I mean, I've got a higher regard for the public than Councillor Amos.
Is that
Related to Councillor Osborne's points.
yes?
If you're so sure that the public want to spend £975 on these shields, why don't you set up a crowdfunding page and allow the people to demonstrate? Because you're always one, and indeed I would say this about councillors generally, to force the public into things. Because you've got to remember that people can't go, no, actually I don't want to pay that 8p. You're saying to some people that don't want to pay the 8p, no, you must pay the 8p. You must pay the 8p. Why don't you voluntarily ask people, would you like to contribute 8p to this shield that I can put on my mantle and my friends can come round and look at and go, oh, you're the mayor, isn't that fantastic?
Okay, okay, thanks very much. I'd like Councillor Mrs. Wilson.
I just would like to remind Councillor Amos of the money that we raise in our year of being mayor. I personally, and I'm sure every other mayor, has raised tens of thousands, but there's over 16,000 I raised for good causes in East Grinstead during my year. Perhaps that affects how much good we do in the community during that year. And I do not believe that the majority of residents would object.
So why force it?
Okay, right, okay, what I'm going to do now, I think we've all decided that some recognition of the mayor needs to remain. The question for this committee tonight is, which one of those 3 do you want? Councillor Matthews, I need to move on.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, I'd like to propose that we go for the upgraded existing shield.
Expensive.
I didn't catch it. Who said it?
I'd like to propose that we go for the existing shield upgrade.
Yeah. Do you? Okay. I was going to ask the town clerk's advice. Where do we vote on each one? To see which.
No, you needed a proposal and you've now got.
Okay, we got a proposal on each one.
I'll second.
Okay. You'll second that for the upgrade of that shield.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is the one with the picture. So you're talking about the background colour.
Yes, the shield, with the tacky. I mean,
I've got one. If I say quid at the time.
Right, all those in favour of retaining the shield. That's four. Against.
I don't see 3 hands, so therefore that's carried.
Okay, so that is carried to retain the upgraded shield, and members will have an idea of what they will look like, or they will or not.
Well, very similar to what it currently is.
Yeah, but you're saying it's more.
When we get something come through,
So-
before we order it, we will circulate it so everyone can have it.
Okay, so we've done the civic regalia, now,
We're still on the-
so the second matter is part of this agenda item, is to whether to reintroduce the gilt name badges which were discontinued in 2018. Again, you have the report in your papers. These are, I think, that's why we had the lanyards, these introduced. To have these resupplied at cost of £30.16, and that is, if it's in the bulk order of 20. Plus each engraving is then an extra £1.7 per letter. And it depends on how long your name is. Just how much
How much you going to cost?
each badge is going to cost. Sorry. So these are quite expensive.
Is that one you're wearing there? The colour one, is that what you've got around in it now?
These are the current-
And this is instead of the little medal.
Initially, they were withdrawn in 2018 because these.
You have both, councillor Osborne.
No.
You've been issued with both. You have one of these as well as the gold badge.
Oh, I see. Okay. Right.
Personally, I don't see the point in having both. They're quite costly.
That's the ones.
Now, just to bear in mind that if you were reminded to have these introduced, it is current policy that the staff also have these badges as well. And that was a previous policy. You can't just have one for the council and just suddenly take away the entitlement to the staff, because they're more in the public eye than what we are. You know, dealing with residents, weddings, they're more in the face of the public. So I will throw this open to questions.
Can I clarify something, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, of course.
I've got a couple of different things. I've got, I think it says that you just showed me over there. That's every council's got one of those with their name. Yeah.
There's some.
2018.
And then I've got one with a little dangly bit, with a little.
That's your past mayor's badge.
Yeah.
The reason why this, some councillors have not got the badges, so some didn't get them. So really, if they're we reintroduce them, they will be ongoing councils, administrations.
One of those.
Yeah.
I got it.
And
And they're 194 quid.
no,
There's £30.16 each, plus £1.07 per letter for your name to go on it.
Sorry, I'm saying.
my personal point is I really don't think they're necessary in this day and age. I mean, try to integrate the council into the 21st century, or you having leaders which are much more professional. There is a cost here, and you know, bearing in mind in this economic climate where everything's going up, like petrol prices, food, everything, that I think it'd be a bit disingenuous to see, you know, the lives of the general public spending money like that on ourselves. But I will throw that open. Councillor Traynor, Councillor.
Yes, so I am one of the councillors that doesn't have the gold pin badge, because I was elected in 2019. So anyone who's elected in 2019 onwards won't have one. I'm happy with not having one. I think they're very lovely. I think they're very smart, but I don't feel the need to have one to be a councillor and to do my job as a councillor. So as much as they're lovely, I don't feel the need that we spend that money, spend it across everybody. I think that it would just be an expense that isn't required to make us look professional and to do the job that we require as town council, or is required of us as town councillors. As nice as they are, I feel that it's not required, in my opinion.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I've got nothing to add to that, but I agree with every word.
Do I have any other questions? I don't, so. Councillor
I'd
Amos.
like to know whose idea was this first. And secondly, I'd also like to agree with what the councillors have said. The average person does not get 7p's worth of value out of those little badges. And we already get a tie or a scarf. And this is a far better display of I've been a councillor or I am a councillor than the little badge, which people have had to go like that up to.
Okay, thank you very much. I see no other questions, so I'll propose that the name badge.
Councillor Graham could ask a question. I don't think you have necessarily to name individuals who asked for it, but perhaps you could explain to why this is back on the agenda.
I just think it was in part in conversation that some councillors didn't have name badge and some did.
Yeah, but
And it's questioned, but
Okay.
that's not appropriate to name names. It's irrelevant. It's just something that come up in passing someone as an observation. So I'm going to propose then, subject to what's been said this evening, that we do not reintroduce these name badges. Is that fair? Comment,
Propose not to reintroduce again.
yeah, do I have a seconder?
I'd like to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's closed.
Just carry, thank you. Right, the working groups, item 16 on the agenda, working groups and subcommittees, again, that is in front of you. I would like to propose those service seconder.
I'd like to second those,
Thank
Chair.
you very much, Vice Chair. Are there any questions? I see none. All those in favour? That's agreed. Thank you. Now, does Councillor Matthews have to leave the room on this one, Town Clerk?
I don't think he needs to leave the room, but I would advise him not to speak on the motion.
You okay with that, Councillor Matthews?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Members, you've read the report, and it's to consider an offer regarding the ransom strip of the land between Dexter Drive and Highfields. An additional piece of information for this report is that 30 odd years ago, the old cricket ground in West Street was sold to Crest for development, which was adjacent to Highfields. There are badges in Highfields which use the cricket ground for foraging. And I believe they're still in Councillor Matthews' garden, actually. When they lost access to the cricket ground, a number of them relocated to the cemetery at Queen's Road, which caused the problems we are now trying to resolve via the Amenities and Tourism Committee. The ransom strips at West Lane and Dexter Drive were acquired by Eastminster Town Council to protect the remaining site at Highfields for remaining badges from further development. While the council may not be able to stop development, the strips were there to protect the badges, and we need to consider this if we were to allow an access over these strips. It is also noted that if a full access was granted, this could threaten 2 large trees on the ransom strip by Dexter Drive. So what it is basically in a nutshell, in Highfields, we've got news that maybe a developer wants to develop that site, and rather than use the existing access, which is virtually opposite Queen's Road, that goes up an angle, they wanted to go through Dexter Drive, because at the end of Dexter Drive is fenced off, and we own the ransom strip across that drive. My immediate thoughts was a bit of horror on that one, because this council has always been and tried to look after the welfare of our residents. We had something very similar where On Harvard's Farm, they wanted to punch through access onto the Great Harvard's Farm. A cul-de-sac where people have actually bought their houses there. Knowing full well that's in the cul-de-sac, they've chosen that, and to have some through traffic there, I think that is will lower their standard of living and probably the price of their houses. Now, that may not be a consideration for us, but the principle of that is that we need to look after our residents. If we let this go, people aren't going to trust us, what we do in the town, because we're making a fast buck, you know, just for the for the detriment to the residents there. So, is there any questions on that? I'll go to Councillor Belson.
Just correct me if I'm wrong, I thought we discussed this at committee and we actually had rejected it.
It hasn't been to a
That's
committee.
approved. It's approved.
Was it?
It's
Senior moment, apologies. Right.
Did you want to? Yes, Councillor Vice Chair.
Yes, when I first heard about it, my concern is that if we did anything, what they're going to do is they've got access to make development, and I think that would be detrimental to the residents that are in the area. And I think it would be a short-term gain for a long-term problem. And so my vote would be to not accept this.
Councillor Owens.
I'm interested to know which route is going to cause less aggregate harm or disruption. Is it the case that if they go through Dexter Drive, that's going to cause more disruption to residents than if they go through Highfields?
Yes.
It's Highfields that's due to be redeveloped, so the access would be
Up there.
off West Hill.
Yeah.
Yes, so there'd be more disruption to the residents because you have to turn left into Pavilion Way, right, then left, then right.
Yeah. I've been up there, yeah.
Yeah, so you're familiar. So it's recommend, if there's no other questions, bear with me. Is to, and I'll propose that that we don't allow access rights from Dexter Drive to the proposed development in Highfields, and that we fence off our strip of land on the other side of Dexter Drive to make it perfectly clear that is our piece of land. Do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
You happy with that proposal, Town Clerk?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All those in favour? That's agreed.
You mentioned the fencing, you see.
Okay, thanks.
Chairman, can I don't really want to, I know I shouldn't pass by, but it does sound on paper that West Lane has a web. Did you want to add that?
Sorry, Councillor Matthews, I can.
Yeah, on the recommendation,
It says that Highlands and West Lane and Highfields. Recommendation. We didn't mention West Lane.
Sorry, I thought you said Ransom strips, I beg your
I
pardon.
thought you said
I did
West
say
Street.
Ransom strips.
So does that
But
include West
if we can
You
include
said
West,
strips, you could put it.
so just to clarify that West Lane strip is included in that.
Yeah.
Just like that, clear, yeah. Item 19 on the agenda, we go to the police station. And this is to consider whether the council wish to make a bid to purchase the old police station on East Court when it goes to market. We don't need to set a ceiling as to the bid at this time. It is purely an expression of interest. If the council wants to set the top price, then we're discussing money and we'll have to go into a private session. If the committee wished to discuss how it would be financed, then that would have to go to council to agree borrowing. So throw that open to committee. In other words, you really want the town clerk to actually see how much thing.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just one question. If we did put in a bid for it, what would we want it for? What would the use be?
Well,
It'll be community use.
yeah, it'd be for community use. But to say exactly what that is for further down the road, we need to find out, you know, how much we can get it for, and then bring that back to the committee. So it's the first step in a long process.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Osborne.
Yes, I think we should express an interest in this, and I'll give you a couple of, well, several reasons why I would say that. The first one is that it will be a move to prevent further incursion into East Group housing, which I think it would be a bad thing, and I don't think Councillor Amos's sort of general approach on this. I think if you spoke to people in East Grinstead to a man, they wouldn't want housing in East. They've probably got more than enough of it already, and there's worse to come. So I think any move on the part of the town council to acquire the police station in the first instance to oppose to prevent housing will be supported. I'll support it on those grounds. Secondly, I think that there is less and less land for purposes that such as been mentioned in this report, such as some kind of health facility, etc. There's a crisis building in East Grinstead, and it's not going to get any better in my view. And I think holding that, if we held that land, we'd have a lot of options. I can think of a lot of community uses for it as well. We've started to discuss this previously, like starter units for small businesses. So on those grounds, I would support it. And I don't think we've anything to lose by it, because we would own a key piece of land here. I do hope that that this is supported, because I think that I think it's very important, and it's important that the town council takes the lead on this, because you know it has been shown that this is a neglected town by other authorities. You know, I think I've got to say that. You know, county councils and district councils, we're not their first priority on these things.
No,
And I think that if we don't do these things, don't take a lead, then nobody's going to be honest with you.
Thank you. I mean, that's why, but before I come to Mrs. Who was next? Mrs. Belson. That's why I was so pleased that we got the opportunity to purchase St Barnabas, you know, because down that neck of the woods, you know, that there isn't anything due to the undulation or the hills, the topography of it. You know, for older people, it's ideal to have a community centre down there. And this is what this town council is all about, is looking after our residents, and where we can, is to provide those sort of facilities. So I agree with you. Councillor Mrs. Belson.
Just wanted to say, I agree with everything that's been said, that we should definitely
Look into it.
look into it.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can
I'm going to go to Councillor Amos.
No, that's good.
I'm happy to hear from Councillor Debelle first, because I like to rebut the points that are made.
Councillor Smith.
Would you graciously allow me to ask a question or make a point, which I think will be pertinent? As you know, when we talk about this group, I think we need to be wary that they may have discovered a covenant on this, which has made it a little bit cheaper than it would have been, because they were not prepared to sell it to us at any price at one time, and now all of a sudden they're asking us first and foremost. So I would recommend that we be careful on it, because that might detract from the actual price, and we might gleefully jump in there and spend a lot of money unnecessarily. Thank you. I'm not saying don't buy it, I'm saying be careful about it.
Well, I'm sure all those sort of details will be looked into anyway. Councillor Amos.
Hopefully.
So I would
You can have as long as you like, as long as it's no more than 3 minutes.
Okay. I would disagree with the points made. In regards to Councillor Osborne's first point, preventing development, yes, you're right, most people are opposed to development, I would give you that. But given that house prices are 14 times average East Grinstead incomes, I think it's more important that people should have an increased opportunity for home ownership, and the only way to do that is to increase supply and thus reduce house prices. Now, the second point that Councillor Osborne made is that there's less and less land for these kind of community services. I would agree with that, but then the people that are to blame for that are the people in this room. I mean, there's land galore out there, but the reason you can't build on it is because councils are going, oh no, that's Greenbelt, and that's our area of outstanding natural beauty. And all of these areas outside the town on the edge would be perfect, because you could build a car park, you wouldn't disrupt that many people, but because of councils, that's not the case. I would also say it will require more taxation, and this council did promise to keep council tax down. And secondly, I would say, and this really builds on the first point of my rebuttal to Councillor Osborne, it's an inefficient use of resources. If developers are willing to pay more money for it than people for community use, it's clear that they value it more. If there was a bidding war, the people that wanted it for housing would value it more. And I know everybody dismisses this point, but you haven't shown me a way through which you can demonstrate that it's more valued for community use. Apart from we're councillors and we represent the democratic will of the population, despite the fact that that was 4 years ago. But money is a fantastic display of value. It shows what people value. If they're willing to pay more for it for housing, they value it more than the people that are wanting to use it for community service. So despite the fact everybody says, you know, the price of everything, Charles, and the value of nothing, money displays what people value. If somebody pays more for something than somebody else, they value it more than that other individual. They're going to use it more efficiently.
Thank you. Councillor Peacock.
Yeah, I listen to all the views. I think we should certainly plough on and investigate the opportunity. And all I would say is, as Councillor Debelle said, this site has been, how should we say, in the ether for 5 or 6 years, and it hasn't gone anywhere. So I would question what the appetite is for house developers. So,
Could I come back, Mr. Chairman, just briefly? I think that point that's been made by Councillors Bell and the Mayor actually is important, but never forget, we are the thorn in the side. We own part of the site. That may be a reason that there are difficulties in doing this development. So we are in a fairly strong position, and we shouldn't forget that. Can I just also say that Councillor Amos's point about, he goes right against the question. He wants them to have their say if they're spending 8p on the mayor's badge, but he doesn't want them to have their say if they're in favour of us preventing housing in each other.
I can talk to you afterwards about that.
Inconsistencies there. And in any case, he was left to the town as a war memorial. The bloke's pictures out in the hall there.
Can I come back to that?
First of all, I'm going to go to the town clerk. So I know the town clerk would like to come and clarify a couple of points. I don't want to dwell too much on this because I've got the general opinion that we're going to be looking into as to an initial investigation. The town clerk wants to come and clarify something.
Just want to ensure that nobody's left any misunderstanding whatever at all. So if I give you a little bit further background as to how this approach came about, I don't think that there is anything untoward with regards to this site. Of course, you never know what we might find with regards to search, which I accept. But in the first instance, the police were looking at joining forces with a social housing provider. That has fallen down because the social provider walked away from the project. As to the what and why for that, we don't know. A lot of time has passed under the bridge since that was originally talked about, which was probably some 4 years ago now. So a lot of time has moved on with that. Because that project where the police were intending to redevelop in the first instance themselves, because that has come to an end, the decision has been that the police wish to realise their asset as soon as possible. This is why they have decided not to go through planning permission, and it is simply going to be put onto market for advertising for sale as is. Because there's no planning permission going along with it, that will affect the price of the site in our favour, in that it won't be as expensive if they've already managed to get the planning permission for development. So I just really want to be very clear that the reason it's coming forward that I have been told is because the police wish to realise that asset very quickly. They want money for it. They haven't offered it to us for sale. They came to us and asked us whether or not, what our view would be if they were going to sell it. And at that point, I said, well, hold on a moment, I think you may find that the town council is interested. So could you please go back and ask the PCC if she would consider selling it to us outside of a marketing position. I've heard absolutely nothing further, and obviously it was the leader who asked me to bring it to the committee, and I know there has been a group discussion on it. So that's the full background in case anybody's under concerns. There may be things that come out as we go further, there may well be. I'm not saying there isn't, but where I sit at the moment with what I have been told directly, I'm not concerned that there is a reason as to why the police are trying to now offload, if you see. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that. So, okay, no other. Allowed to come back, Councillor Amos, very briefly, please, because we need to move on.
Just in regards to Councillor Osborne's comments, if East Court was given to the community at large, then it shouldn't be run by this council. It should be run as Athens was run, by the people as a whole of East Grinstead, all 11,500 of them, or 27,000. Secondly, I'd say you are right. If you were to do a cost benefit analysis of housing and include individuals' assessment of the negative aesthetic externality.
Councillor Amos, I'm going to have to interrupt you there, because the purpose of this agenda item is to give the permission to the town clerk to look how much we want for it, or how much the police want for it, and look into the costings. That is not. It's not.
Well, the theory is relevant in a very roundabout way.
But this is the very first part of a long process, you know. So I don't want to get into all the ins and outs of what we just talked about.
Okay.
So I see no other questions. So I'm going to make a proposal that the committee are asked to negotiate to the purchase of the old police station on East Court, and to wait and set the limits at a later date. Town clerk, how can I word that bit better? There we go.
I think you might want a proposal along the lines of committee requests the town clerk to make further inquiries as to the purchase of the police station on behalf of East Grinstead Town Council.
Can I have a second to that proposal?
Get the wording in.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
I'm happy to second it, but let the town clerk type.
Should not the word expressing interest included. That seems to be a technical term.
We're not at the point of price yet, are we?
No.
Okay. What time would be?
You go.
For the committee,
I'm worse than him.
Instructed the clerk.
that's it. To proceed with gaining. Information.
Because they're free.
Tuesday, Jason, Public Services Committee, were in here, and Jason was chairman, and then Jason came in. So everyone was at the meeting.
I've tested
He's got the
myself.
cold.
It's not that, it's the cold.
The cold.
You can keep that, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Jason's got it.
yeah. I'll ask
Right, so,
Okay, so,
that's what you want, so
In the committee, it's
instructed the
taken.
clerk to proceed with gaining information from the Police and Crime Commissioner as to the potential of the town council purchasing the old police station on East Court. It's really clear. That's
yeah,
what it is,
okay.
yeah.
Do I have a second?
I'll have to second that, Chair.
All those in favour? That's 3, town clerk, thank you very much.
Put my hand up.
Agenda, move on to agenda item 19, which is a Checkermead, serving our constitution. This is for noting. Do members have any questions?
This this motion, I don't know if you want to ask councillor Ogden if you want to
Yeah,
say anything about it.
perhaps I could say there's one or two things, because there is an aspect of this that affects the council, is that the constitution has changed in the previously. First of all, let me say that the constitution is the sole prerogative of the trustees to agree their constitution, but of course they're not going to do that without consulting the town council and hoping for approval and understanding. So originally, and you'll have in the papers here, you'll have the original trustees and you'll have the current trustees. Originally, the council had a majority of trustees. Now, the history of this is that there's a reluctance of councillors in the past to actually be a trustee of the theatre, because I think it was 4 originally. Was it 4?
Up to 5. I think.
5, it was 5. We never got near that number, I think, recently. So the change is that there's an equal number of trustees that are nominated by the council, in other words, and there are 4 external trustees, so it's an equal situation. The reason why we want this is that it's a fairly specialised thing running the theatre, and it gives us more flexibility in bringing on board people with specific skills, whatever. So that is an advantage to the theatre. I would say that there's no disadvantage in my view to the council, because the council they hold all the strings really, as we all know. I mean, the theatre exists through its grant, because it's council's grant. The council owns the property, and I think I've said this previously, but I can say it again, is that this is a pretty good deal for the council, because the amount of improvements that are going on there and have gone on there, your property is well looked after, and you've got a facility that you get credit for that somebody else is doing all the work. And as I say, I think that an equalisation of trustees is going to mean that it's going to the board of trustees can work better, because, as I said before, we can bring in specialist sort of expertise as and when, like we have in fact Simon on there, who is health and safety man, who does a lot of work for free and all the rest of it. And, of course, if you know, there's people, as I said before, people have been falling over themselves to be trustees of the theatre. There's a sort of lack of thespian ambition in this council for some reason or other.
Okay, thank you very much. So, is there any, Councillor Peacock.
Just a quick question. You've forgotten this, but you obviously, when the CIO says it's up to 5 councillors, you said equalising at 4. Does that mean the number was reduced to 4 then?
Yeah, I think you're losing one. It's one, isn't it? Oh, to notice, I'm awfully sorry
I
about it.
thought it was staying as up to 5. I hadn't picked that up. I picked up the increase in the external, but I didn't. It is here. It's attached to the papers.
I think it's an equal number, so it's 4. It's 4 of each.
That is the case. Because we had originally, we could have up to 5.
Yeah. If I could remind you, something I'd like to remind you, actually, there was a time when every councillor was part of the management board of the theatre. It was shambolic nonsense, to be honest with you. There were 17 or 18 people sitting around the table, and and people didn't want to be there, obviously. And that was some of the worst times for the theatre, actually. Since it's got a sort of workable number, it seems to work as a team. Councillor Julie's on there now.
You are correct, Councillor. You are quite correct, Councillor Osborne. It is, if you've got the papers in front of you, under charity trustees, which is item 9, item 4 says number of charity trustees. There should not be less than 1, no more than 4 external charity trustees. So that increases the external ones to 4. But then says there mustn't be at least 5. Yes, at least 5 charity trustees. And there are not less than 3 nor more than 4 nominated charity trustees. So we will reduce to 4, and there will be up to 4 external.
Okay.
I hope I've reassured you.
That's great. Thank you very much. So I see no other questions, and that is for noting. Is that noted?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 20, the outside services team resources. Now, Town Clerk, would you like to give a quick brief on that?
Well, because it's going to go from AMC, but the work that has been done at Queen's Road. We see from the agenda that the outside team is incredibly busy all the time, and actually, Councillor Matthews, you brought it up, so doing all this work at Queen's Road, we've had to get in external contractors to look after the site and keep it going, because the grounds that the team, outside services team, the town council are really stretched. So this is to bring it in line so that then the Queen's Road Cemetery, which hasn't been maintained for all this time, it's now having all this time and money and effort set on it, that we maintain it now. So to have an extra member of staff would help with, or keep it in the condition that we wanted to, move it forward, maintain it, as well as assisting everybody else with all the other jobs around the town, which seem to be getting plentiful. So I'm very keen to support this, because I think they work incredibly hard. The job is forever growing, and to have good people in the right place would be incredibly beneficial. I think everyone around town is always saying, if they could just do this, if they could do that, nice as that. And you know, they've been pulled in so many directions before they actually burst. And I think we're at the stage now where employing somebody else would be a great asset.
Yeah, thank you. Before I come to Councillor Matthews, is just to add a couple of things. So there's actually 2 vacancies. We had one member actually leave the outdoor services team. So we've got 2 very good candidates that have come forward. So what all this means is 1 extra post. And as my vice chair has just said this evening about the Queen's Road Cemetery, we spent quite a lot of money with contractors in there, and that would be a shame to let that part of it go when it inevitably will be cheaper to employ someone to do that, regarding the cost of the contractor. Not only that, there's a whole raft of things which I won't go into. I mean, this time of year, I think the outdoor team or some of them are out at 5:30 or 6 o'clock watering all the hanging baskets, and consequently their day is a bit shorter. The hours are prorated, and there's all the grass cutting, graffiti removal. There's a whole raft of things. So this has come forward. The cost can be met out of the Queen's Road Cemetery, and I think the figures are here in front of you on here. So it's quite self-explanatory. So I'll go to Councillor Matthews. You wanted to come in and say something.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I brought this up at AMT, I think it was. And this is without any prompting from I haven't read this. And I said, I think it's going to stretch our outdoor team greatly. And when I read this agenda, I thought, wow, what an opportunity. And particularly as in the first paragraph, it says, the interviews resulted in applications and interviews for 2 exceptional candidates, which, despite being a nice problem, prompted a request from the estates manager and cemetery for a review of the resources team to be brought forward. I don't blame them. I hope they are, both of them, still available. But it says on the 3rd paragraph, the team had also absorbed more work over the past 10 years. I've seen that. I mean, I think we're so lucky to have such an enthusiastic team that do it with such,
Totally agree.
goodwill. And so, as it goes on further to say, the team have struggled to take lead during the summer, and this raises concerns as to the burnout and other health concerns. They're a busy team as well as responding to ad hoc requests. The council take great pride in the team and the work they do. However, they have absorbed work and are now at breaking point. And we've taken over the cemetery at Queen's Road. It is a particularly difficult site. Thank God I had a couple of and Harry there to help me go over that terrain. and it's looking good. And I think if we can take advantage of this situation, I think it will infuse the team even more, and it will maintain Queen's Road now that we've got it. Just the loose ends to be tied up. I think this is a great idea. It's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you, councillor. Before I come to councillor Elsie, yesterday, as members might realise, is that when we put in the barrier, it was the outdoor team that dug up the block paving and done a bit of the groundwork. Similarly, they've done the fencing round, the new fencing round the play park, and it's those sort of ad hoc things that the outdoor services team, not just running the mill, cutting grass, etc. So we're very lucky in that, and they are cost saving to the councils as a team as a whole. So one extra person they do really need. So councillor Elsie.
No, I'm all in favour. I just wanted to make sure, I mean, gardening and grass cutting is very seasonal, isn't it? So are we saying that throughout the year, we can substantiate keep these people occupied throughout without, that was really what I wanted, because obviously our gardening is sort of March to September. I just wanted to make sure, I mean, I'm fully in favour, I just want to make sure that the expenditure will be justified throughout the year.
Absolutely, trust me, in the winter time, it's just a different type of work.
I just wanted to confirm
I remember when I worked at a farm when I was a kid, it was very busy and sometimes hard seen because you overstretch yourself. Winter time, there's still the equal amount of work to do with hedge cutting and all the things you need to catch up in. So it's sort of pro-rata. It's just as busy.
Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, a lot of the winter work is indeed the things you can't do during the summer. So of course we've got to be very careful when we are touching hedges and trees and this, that and the other. So a lot of that work takes place in the winter months. If we do have poor weather, then of course we have the salt spreading and the snow removal. So that's when we do that, filling up the grit bins takes a whole week in itself. So these things can, depending on the weather, can be quite time consuming. We get involved in floods. When we have floods, it tends to be our staff who will therefore go off and put the road markings out and assist until the county council arrive to be able to take charge. We've and then the jobs such as the nameplate changes, a lot of that happens during the winter months because it just said we don't have time to do it in the summer months, and the cleaning of the road signs and things like that. So I can assure you they are busy all year round. It's just become very, very big. And just to give committee some comfort, if you like, we had intended to have these conversations in the autumn for next year's budget. This was always coming forward because we knew we were going to need it. It's just unfortunate that with the member staff leaving and the position we found ourselves with two very, very good candidates, it just seemed absolutely appropriate to bring it forward. But clearly we wouldn't normally be looking to increase staffing in year when there isn't the budget for it. But luckily, having sat down and looked at the figures, we are able to manage it this year within the existing budgets we have.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. And I think the estates manager will be very happy if we approve this. That will give it less of a headache.
Chairman, I asked them if they were still both available.
Yes, they are.
Oh, good.
Yes, thank you.
Both candidates were advised last week that we would not be making a decision because we were going back to committee to ask if we could recruit 2 posts. So they're both very aware why we have not made a decision at the moment on the job. Yeah.
Okay, so I see no other questions. So very quickly, I'll go to the recommendation I proposed. The committee are recommended to approve the addition of 1 staff member to the outdoor team on the same salary scale and job description as the existing post, noting that any overspend on salaries after offsets can be met from the earmarked reserves for the cemetery in this year. Do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. All those in favour? That is unanimous, Chair Clark. Right, last item on the agenda, speed indicator device. At the moment, speed indicator devices, we have one from West Sussex County Council now and again, and we also have one on a 6-week cycle with the other local parishes. So we like to get it for 6 weeks every now and again. The reason why we've been toying this with the idea for some time to buy our own but what is highlighted this to be brought forward to committee is the road closures around East Grinstead and the complaints of speeding, particularly down Dunnings Road and up the West Hoathly Road. As you know, Dunnings Road is the topography of that is quite a steep hill. So the idea is that we purchase our own speed indicator device. So we got one, and I particularly would like it to see Dunnings for quite a duration while these roadworks are going on. But we still have our SID for other parts of the town, which I know Councillor John Belsey was very keen to have it down Woodbury Avenue. It's been down there twice. So I'm sure if he was on this committee, we'd probably support that. Because speeding in this town is an issue. I think wherever you go down the road where I live, there's speeding cars and it's so dangerous. And I think it's just an indicator and a reminder to people to slow down. So I will open that up to members for discussion. Councillor, Ms. Banner.
Thank you, Chair. I understand the need for one, and the budget is there. I think it's well explained in the papers of how it can be afforded. So looking at it, we've only got to find like £433 or something to afford it. The rest of it is already from funds we've got there. It does act as a deterrent, and you know, I'm the first one to be heavy on my accelerator, but they do deter me. So you know, it works for me. So I think it works for a lot of people. And to have it definitely down Dunnings at the moment would be excellent. Woodbury is always a place, but there's little places that can be done on a regular basis, and we'd be able to spread it around the town. And I'm sure a lot of residents that contact us and say, can we put it down there for a certain period of time? If we had the other two plus our own, we could ensure that the town was covered, and it would reassure our residents that we do take it seriously. And I would be much more careful. Don't minute that, please, Town Clerk.
Councillor
I'm fully in
Stelson.
agreement. I think it would be good, especially if it's portable, that we can use it from 6 weeks here or 6 weeks, you know, whatever it happens. So that I think problems seem to come in certain areas at certain times. Residents say in Herentay, or you know, they come and they say, well, gosh, you know, we suddenly got a lot of speeding in our area. It's portable. I think it's a win-win situation.
It is a complaint throughout the whole of the town when you go around talking to people and knocking on doors at certain times. They sort of fill up the speeding down Herentay Drive, Erskine Road, Garden Road. But if we can be seen that we're not just ignoring our residents, but actually doing as much as we possibly can to deter speeding in areas. And if we got our own in conjunction with the ones we share, then we could have one or two at the same time. Maybe.
It's a no-brainer.
Just like a quick comment, Chairman.
Councillor Matthews, I'll come back to Councillor Owens.
It's just, is there any sign on it that this is supplied by Town Council, EGTC?
We'll give it some thought as to how we can do it.
Just EGTC, supplied by EGTC.
Yeah, well, I think social media could be actually
It
clarified.
might go the other way.
Well, it could be looked into. Councillor Amos.
I was going to ask how this council justifies 30-mile-an-hour speed limits. if it's done on sort of cost benefit grounds, the fact that cars have got safer over the last 20 years would suggest that it should go slightly faster.
Oh, sorry, can you just say that bit again?
How do you justify 30-mile-an-hour speed limits,
Yes,
Say guys,
but so the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits? But we don't have
you
those.
need to do a speed awareness course when you've done one.
Ah,
It teaches you an awful lot, Charles.
You think those meetings.
but you've seen as many road accidents as I have in my career. You know, people think they're safe in the car, they're not. I've seen people killed in speeds of about 25 miles an hour. Like, I know the cars are very strong these days, but they do fold up very quickly. That's what people have got to realise. And it's not just the person that's driving, it's that the other people they may involve. So, you know, for us as a town council to remind people to keep the speed down, then personally I'm all in favour of that.
Okay,
So I'll go to,
Mr. Brown, do you mind if I just said a quick word? This came up with public services the other day. There was a lady from the public was complaining bitterly about the speeding around. And I think that what Councillor Matthews suggested is a great idea to make sure that people know that this is the town council's response to people.
okay, thank you. Anyway, I go to recommendation I propose to purchase the speed indicator device and initially place this in Danes Road and later resite it to other areas where unofficial diversions are driving up speeds on the roads.
so, should we buy a hairdryer and take it yellow?
Okay, hang on, well, the cost to be from existing budgets and the borrowment of the Bluebell grant, which will be unused this year. That's if a grant cannot be accessed. Can I have a second, please?
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. All those in favour? That's unanimous, Town Clerk. So that is the
And
end. And
More Germans, I think, would be
what's this
you're
meeting?
very smart. Okay.
Thank you very much.
8:25 and
Thank you.
thank you, Vice Chair. The next meeting will be held on the 5th of September 2022.
I'll still gather down to the panel.
And thank you very much for attending and
Thank you, Chairman.
Well done, Dick.
Thank you, Chair.
thank you, Vice Chair.
Special meeting now.
Special council now.
Yeah, I've just got to stretch my legs.
Can you just give a time?
Yes, of course. Thank you, councillors, for attending this special council this evening. The time is 20:28 when I open this meeting. First of all, I'd like to clarify that this is a special council, so there are no public questions for this meeting. Item 1 is apologies for absence, and I have those from councillors Mrs. Julie Mockford, councillor Mrs. Christine Maidstone, councillor Whitaker, councillor Visser, councillor Mrs. Bennett, and councillor Jason Woodgate.
And Councillor J. Belsey.
Sorry, thank you, councillor Belsey, John Belsey. So, next item is declarations of interest. Do we have any? I don't think we do.
What's the subject matter?
Declarations. Well, this is for the annual return.
Okay.
So so no declarations of interest. Okay, moving on to item 2, it's to formally resolve the annual return comprising statement of accounts for 2021-2022 financial year, the annual review of effectiveness of internal control, and the annual internal audit report to the full council following formal recommendation of the Finance and General Purposes Committee, agenda items 11 and 12. 23rd of the 6th, 2022. So we've just discussed these in FGMP, which Councillor Swetton has just chaired. So I will move on to propose, firstly, there are two motions, but the first is to propose to approve the annual governance and accountability return for 2021-2022 by A, confirming yes to questions 1 to 8 and not applicable to question 9, as set out in the annual governance statement, section 1, contained in Appendix E of the Finance and General Purposes Committee papers of the 23rd of June 2022, and to agree that this now be signed by the chairman and the town clerk. May I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Swetton. As I said, we've just debated this in some detail, but does anyone wish to speak on this item? No, so all in favour, please show. That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Shall I move on to town clerk's item? Okay. Thank you. And the second recommendation from FG&P is B, accepting the accounting statement, section 2, as set out in Appendix F of the Finance and General Purposes Committee papers of the 23rd of June 2022. Again, we've debated this. May I have a second, please? Thank you, Councillor de Bell. Does anyone wish to speak on this? No? All in favour, please show. Thank you very much. So that leads me to confirm the date of the next meeting of the Town Council is Monday, the 4th of July at 7 p.m. And I thank you for attending this meeting. And I end it at 20:31.
Very much.
That was a list.
1 o'clock. I was going to say,
Will you stop recording?
Councillor Osborne, that if you want to do cost benefit